How do you fight a monster without becoming one yourself? You don't. You become a monster. You can stay naive, and that's not good because you're vulnerable and you're not useful if you're naive. So let's say, well, instead of being naive, you decide you're going to go confront the monster. Okay, well, the problem with that is that you become the monster. All right, so how do you deal with that? And the answer is to do it voluntarily. Because if you develop your monstrousness voluntarily, then perhaps you can bring it under civilized control, right? You can integrate that capacity for mayhem and destruction that you develop within yourself. You can integrate that within a comprehensive and properly directed practical philosophy. And so that means that you're disciplined. Like a warrior isn't a monster. Look, you see this sort of thing happening all the time in classic hero stories. Like if you look at the story of The Hobbit, for example. Bilbo lives in this little protected area. So it's like the castle that the Buddha grows up in. All the bad things are outside of it. And they're naive and they go about their day-to-day work and nothing really threatens them and there's no monsters around. And because they don't have any real challenges and because they're peaceful in their wealth and security, they think they're good. But they're not. They're just naive and undisciplined and relatively weak. And so they're not prepared for anything. When all hell breaks loose, they're like bait, they're like prey. Now, despite the fact that the Shire folk are rather small and a bit comical and tremendously naive, they do have a latent ability for courage and forthrightness. And so what happens to Bilbo when he goes off to confront the dragon? He has to become a thief, right? Which is it's very strange ethically because, well, Bilbo wasn't a thief, and you think, well, it's better to not be a thief than to be a thief. And the answer to that, it's a very hard answer, very complicated answer, and it's not one to be dealt with lightly. It's not good to be moral if the reason that you're moral is because you cannot be otherwise, right? So you need that capacity for criminality. You need the capacity for criminality. You need the capacity of evil, and you need to have mastered that. And that's what makes you good. And so, well, that's what happens in The Hobbit, is that Bilbo has to develop his dark side, his shadow. And he does that. When Bilbo comes back to the Shire, like, he's never one of the hobbits again. He's always an outsider. He's got a glimmer of magic and danger about him. And that makes people respect him, but they also think that he's unconventional in an unacceptable way and, kind of make a wide berth around him because now he's contaminated with evil and the unknown, even though that makes him a much better character, all things considered, and a real fighter in the battle between good and evil, and the person who's gone out and confronted the dragon and got the treasure, all of that. So, well, the pathway from naivety to the full development of character is associated with the development in the Jungian sense of the shadow, and that's that capacity for mayhem and malevolence that needs to be brought under control. And that doesn't mean that you're justified in going out and breaking rules because you think that you're building your character, It's not that simple. And part of being wise and oriented towards the good is to know when breaking a rule is the right thing to do, even though you shouldn't break rules.